For more on this, I'm joined from London by economist Laurie Laird. Thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Leigh-Ann.
Hiya, good evening. Wow, okay, so let's get into this. The US has slapped these punitive tariffs on India over its purchases of discounted Russian oil. But how damaging is this for the world's fastest growing large economy?
In short, I don't think this is a dramatic piece of news. And it struck me when you were doing your introductory comments. You mentioned what a strong relationship Donald Trump and Narendra Modi had not that long ago, right? I mean, when Modi last went to the US, or at least in the first term, the guys were playing stadiums across the US, with thousands of people coming to see this double act. So what has gone wrong between these two leaders is incredibly confusing, because we did think there was a strong partnership there. Now, Trump did warn that these 50% tariffs were on the cards. Still felt a little surprising when they came into effect a couple of hours ago. But I don't think that they will, as dramatic as it sounds, I don't think this will be incredibly damaging to India. India is a fairly closed economy. It does not spend that much to the U.S. And that's, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. What it does send to the U.S., pharmaceuticals, that and jewelry, that is being cut out. That's being carved out because the pharmaceutical situation in the U.S. is so very expensive. So about 45% of Indian exports will not be tariffed. Only about 2% of India's exports go to the U.S. So there will be some areas of the economy, apparel, footwear, that will hurt. But on terms of top line growth, the economists seem to think that there'll be less than a 1% hit in GDP growth, which is growing at about 7% a year. So it will be painful in pockets, but not over the top line.
And despite the US slapping on these higher tariffs, like we were just talking about, and the fact that the US and India have always been close allies, India just continued to buy Russian crude. Why has New Delhi taken this almost strong stance on not listening to the US?
This is what I can't get my head around. I haven't found an economist who can get their head around this, because India isn't the only economy buying discounted Russian oil. Now, India is profiting to a certain extent. It's buying this cut price crude oil, putting it through its many refineries on Indian soil, and then distributing that domestically and selling it abroad. But India isn't, China is taking a lot of discounted Russian oil. A couple of years ago, the G7, and with America's consent, said Russia can sell as much oil as it wants at a price of $60 a barrel or lower. So everybody was in on this. And the reason for this was to avoid removing a whole lot of oil from the global markets, thereby pushing up the price of energy. Now, this is what really confuses me. India is buying about 1.5 to 2 million barrels a day. If India goes and seeks that oil elsewhere, and Russian oil at this point is not discounted by all that much, given the market price of crude, because crude prices have come down so much. But were that Indian demand to go somewhere else, we're going to see oil prices skyrocket, which is exactly what Donald Trump said he does not want. So the logic behind this move, particularly when other jurisdictions are buying this Russian oil, makes absolutely no sense to me.
And also, let's just put it into context. The US is India's biggest trading partner, and a New Delhi-based think tank has predicted thousands of jobs are at risk as India's exports to the US are set to decline. So do you think closer ties with China and other BRICS countries like Russia will really help India and soften the blow to its economy?
I think absolutely. As I mentioned, there will be pockets of the economy that will struggle. But what this is doing is accelerating a realignment of trade. Now, we see India, we see Modi is going to China for the first time since 2018, right? It's only been a couple of years ago that Indian soldiers and Chinese soldiers were fighting with clubs along a contested line of control. Now Modi is on his way to China over the weekend. Modi also has fairly strong relationships with Russia. It depends on Russia for 60% of its defense imports. So this is hastening, I think, a realignment of Asian trade that was going to come anyway. But losing Modi as an ally may turn out to be quite a mistake for the U.S. And the administration seems to be compounding it by developing quite close relationship with Pakistan, which is another rival of India's. The head of Pakistan's army has been in the U.S. twice over the past year and has had lunch with Donald Trump. So the geopolitical strategy here is baffling.
Yeah, absolutely. And US trade negotiators actually called off a planned trip to New Delhi this week. You just mentioned Modi will be going to China. But my big question here is, what does this mean for America's access to the Asian markets? Because really, India was always key to that for the US.
And America wanted India not just as a market with a lot of people, the world's most populous country. It also really wanted to culture India as a buffer to a very ambitious China. I think that strategy will be wiped out a little bit. One thing that is interesting is we're not seeing from Modi what we've seen from, say, the EU, from a couple of other countries, which is, okay, don't tariff us, and we will promise to buy more U.S. liquefied natural gas. We'll throw in some defense spending there. Modi is not playing that game at all. Now, it's a weird game when countries do this. The EU has promised to buy a whole bunch of LNG. What is overlooked that the EU is a multinational organization where shareholding companies, have their residences or their incorporation. The EU cannot tell companies to just buy more gas from the US. India has a little more latitude, but we're not even seeing that kind of talk. Sure, yeah, we'll buy something. Just exempt us. Modi seems perfectly comfortable in saying, okay, we're going to develop our Indian manufacturing industry more. We're going to really enhance these links with other Asian countries.
Yeah, absolutely fascinating. And thank you so much for your insights, as always, Laurie Laird. It's always great to have you on the show.